New storms possible in the Pacific and Indian Oceans on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for May 22nd. Cyclone Ialy is still alive, but barely holding on as it drifts northwards now towards the equator near Kenya still. It's code blue for another system though right now, the one in the Bay of Bengal, that could become a tropical cyclone fairly soon, and a system in the Western Pacific. Just 10 days until the Atlantic hurricane season begins, and whilst there's no areas of interest active, there is some a tropical disturbance there in the Caribbean Sea affecting Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Just a tiny chance that could do something later on in the Sargasso Sea. It's day 8 of Eastern Pacific hurricane season, and there is another disturbance down there as well, also not marked, but there it is, out over the open ocean, and not expected to do anything in the next 5 days. In fact, it's probably near its peak right now. In the Western Pacific, we're giving a 50% chance to an area of interest that's really starting to look better today, Invest 93W. We're just a little bit worried that model support might collapse again like it did on that other system a couple of weeks ago. But it is looking much better, and it is looking more like that's going to form. Just like this one in the Bay of Bengal, 60% chance that we're now giving this, and it could develop within just 2 or 3 days. GFS being very bullish once again today, with a significant cyclone being pulled out of its forecast. And Cyclone Ialy is still hanging on. It's not looking so good right now. It's much weaker, possibly not even a tropical storm anymore, but we're leaving it on here for continuity's sake. Tropical storm status with winds near 40 miles per hour. Let's take a closer look at it right now. It is just 282 kilometers from Kisiangani in Kenya, 297 from Lamu, 344 from Kismayo in Somalia, 520 from Garissa inland in Kenya, and 636 from Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia. Well, there it is. It's slowly edging northwards at about 3 miles per hour or 5 kilometers per hour, and it is likely to die off very quickly. Its remnants could still shoot up into land, but it is looking less likely, and I think it might just stall offshore now and die off. Here it is on satellite imagery, and you gotta say, it doesn't look very good anymore, does it? Certainly compared to what we were looking at yesterday when it was not far from its peak intensity, it has to be said. But there it is, rapidly weakening, sheared to bits, just a little burst of convection still occurring there. It's always been a small system, but really small footprint now, and I imagine that only a little bit of rain is reaching the coast. There it is on floater imagery, and that's just how quickly it changed there. I'm not even sure if it still has that center of circulation, but it's buried somewhere inside all of that convection. I reckon it still does, but obviously it might be a frail one, only 3 degrees south, so close to the equator where the Coriolis force is getting very weak. Here's the North Indian Ocean, looking at those systems there as well. I say the systems because there's a little thing going on the western coast of India there. Won't last very long, but in the eastern side over the Bay of Bengal, tons of cloud cover. We're really starting to look for an area of interest to develop out of that. Well, this is where the floaters have it right now. Invest 99B already got designated just off the coast of Tamil Nadu, India, showing, I don't know if there's some semblance of a center starting to appear on that imagery or not, but certainly a lot of precipitation on the eastern and southern sides of it, not really affecting the Indian side very much, except much further south. Here's this Western Pacific system, and it really is getting very broad. Look at all of that cloud cover extending northwards beyond Palau, and from north to south it's about the size of the Philippines. It's getting closer slowly but surely. and it will start to move northwestwards. Next we're looking out for some kind of tightening to its core there. This is where the supposed center would be if it had one. It doesn't at the moment. It's just southeast of Palau. It is blowing up decent amounts of convection on the south and the west side, but it's not over the center, and it's not very organized or structured. So we've still got a shell of a system here right now, but it has to be said, it's an improvement on what we saw a few days ago. Here's the Atlantic US East Coast right now. By the way, there's another enhanced risk today in the United States, mainly in Texas. And looking further south in the Caribbean, there's that big area there blowing up convection near Haiti. And this is the East Atlantic off Africa. Not much going on here. Everyone's looking out for the first real tropical wave. No real signs of it yet. Eastern Pacific looking like this. You can see that big disturbance on the left hand side, unmarked, but I think it might have been one of those that National Hurricane Center had last week. And this is that Western Pacific storm, once again a wider shot showing the whole picture across the Philippine Sea, a few storms over Luzon, and a very disorganized long front extending further north. Now this is the Indian Ocean, and you can see there lots of precipitation stretching from southern India through to southern Myanmar and the Andaman Islands right now. Sea surface temperatures continue to improve in the Eastern Pacific. There we are, over 30 degrees Celsius over parts of the far Eastern Pacific south of Mexico. In the Atlantic, temperatures increasing there as well. The Gulf Stream starting to look pretty good, and temperatures almost fully up to 26 degrees in the Gulf of Mexico now. Caribbean Sea also looking very good, particularly around the Cayman Islands towards Cuba, 30 degrees plus. West Pacific certainly warming up there in the Philippine Sea as well, where that area of interest is. Temperatures are currently 30 to 32 degrees Celsius and will stay high over the next 5 days probably until that system turns northeastwards, if it does. Bay of Bengal is roasting there, 32 to 33 degrees Celsius in parts of the region. So if that system does get going, it's got a huge amount of energy to build upon all the way up until its potential landfall. Southwest Indian Ocean, Ialy if you're interested, around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius, water's where it is, but it's not going to be much of a help for that storm anymore. And in the Australian region, it is still clinging on to a few 29 degrees Celsius isotherms there, but it is generally really starting to cool down now, but still a few spots there. Of course, we're not going to see any cyclones though. Similar case in the South Pacific, where temperatures are still quite high further north, but lowering now further south, say in New Caledonia, temperatures down below 26. Compared to average, it looks like this. The Atlantic has a big area now of above average waters, as has been the case for quite some time, 3 to 4 degrees above normal. A little area in the subtropical zone below average still, but that is shrinking. Eastern Pacific still has that narrow channel above average. Western Pacific, the best areas around the Philippines, mainly further west. Bay of Bengal, look to the eastern part of the bay there. Extremely warm waters compared to average, and that's exactly where this storm might be tracking. Oceanic heat content continues to look better for the Eastern Pacific. A few good spots there right now. I know it's nothing compared to the Western Pacific, but by Eastpac standards recently, that's pretty good what we're looking at. Westpac though, huge clumps of energy there off the east coast of the Philippines, and that's exactly where that system will be tracking. In the Atlantic, it looks like this. We're getting a little wider patch there of orange there around Jamaica now, up towards the west coast of Cuba and into the Gulf of Mexico. So really starting to build up that oceanic heat there, and a big area as well southeast of the Lesser Antilles. So let's check the computer models. We're not going to look at Ialy because that's really dying off very quickly. So let's look at the Bay of Bengal system. Here it is developing into a tropical cyclone by the time we get to around the 25th of May there, and then really blowing up according to GFS near its peak intensity not far before landfall around West Bengal and possibly straight through Kolkata as a powerful cyclone. Well, still very speculative as to whether that happens or not, but that is certainly one such scenario here, and that would be a very big one. Western Pacific over the next 5 days as well. That was within 5 days, by the way, that Indian Ocean system landfall. Here's the Westpac. There's that storm forming around the 24th, 25th of May there, and then turning northeastwards once again. Same old from the GFS. This time it might actually come true, but there it is developing once again. Just a couple of days before it actually forms, might just about reach the Philippines with tropical storm force winds before veering off towards the north and northeast. Let's look at precipitation values for both of those systems together here, and you can see how they evolved almost simultaneously, in fact. West Pacific one gets itself going a little bit earlier, I think, and then the North Indian one goes as well. They're both at the same time there, though. But look at the monsoonal rainfall to the east. Extreme amounts of rainfall for parts of Myanmar by the looks of things there. 47 inches, that is nearly 1,200 millimeters of rain, sort of half associated with that potential cyclone. 25 inches for parts of West Bengal or Bangladesh where that system would be hitting, and significant amounts for the Philippines as well. Into the longer range then, day 5 to 10, we see this storm actually stalls as it moves inland over Bangladesh and eventually dies out. Takes its time though, it has to be said, so we could be looking at very high amounts of rainfall for this area, and that would be very bad news. But there it is, holding on to hurricane equivalent status for almost a day after it makes its landfall. It doesn't really want to go away quietly, but eventually it does before we get to the end of the month. So the Western Pacific system as well, moving off northeastwards, there it is, quite powerful, gets to category 3 status, clips just east of Tokyo, Japan, and then moves northeastwards through the Kuril Islands towards Kamchatka. Tropical cyclone by the looks of things there, but certainly to what we've been seeing with models in the last week. But that's obviously because the system's moved further west itself. Scan the barcode and that will take you to the Forster Teen merch store, where you can take a look at all our products as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request at any time. We also still have our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirts available, because there's still no sign of that blasted storm. In the Scilly range, there's really nothing to look at, but I wanted to put up something, so it's actually the Atlantic that we're looking at here. It's probably nothing, but there is a little rumbling there in early June of a potential storm in the western Atlantic. You can see it drifting northwards there. Doesn't look like it quite makes it a tropical cyclone status. It would be a relief for once to actually have a normal start to Atlantic hurricane season, not an early start. Although there was a question or two raised about a system in April that might have been nameable, but the National Hurricane Center didn't do it. Well, on this day in 2010, 14 years ago now, would you believe, it was Cyclone Bandu, which was clipping the northeastern tip of Somalia, the Horn of Africa there, moving into the Gulf of Aden eventually as a tropical storm. It was dying out quite quickly at this point. Also, if you remember, cyclone, I think it was Layla, made landfall in India just a couple of days ago as well. And we've also marked that area of interest down there off the coast of South Africa, which eventually became Cyclone Joel, a powerful subtropical cyclone, and one of very few, if I'm thinking of the right one, that reached hurricane force winds as a subtropical storm. Well, back to today. Believe it or not, it is now 121 years since we had such a late start to the Northern Hemisphere, and that storm formed today. So if we don't get one today, it's going to be back to 1878 since we last saw such a late start in the Northern Hemisphere. Goodness me. Alberto is first on the Atlantic naming list this year, Aletta in the Eastern Pacific, and Hone in the Central Pacific. In the Westpac, it's Awiniar next up. In the North Indian Ocean, it's, of course, Remal. Still at 17 storms so far in 2024. In the Australian region, next name is Robin. In the Southwest Indian Ocean, it's still Jeremy. And in the South Pacific, the next name is Pitta. We'll be back with more on our next tropical weather bulletin tomorrow. Become an ultimate fan today.